How's it going, everybody? I thought I'd share with you today a funny little story that happened to me when I was in freshman year of high school. And this story is a story about how someone had a major crush on me and wouldn't leave me the hell alone about it, to the point where I eventually ended up getting pretty pissed off in a response. But yeah, so basically I was freshman year, right? And my mother worked at the school that I was going to, so I saw her time to time, and this girl was in one of her classes, and this girl she always knew where my mother's room was, and I always like went to my mother's room for lunch. That'll be important later in the story. But one day, this girl, like, I noticed she's in two of my other classes, right? She's in my third block and she's in my fifth block. And I remember one day in fifth block, she talked to me for like a short amount of time, and I just, like responded like a pretty casual conversation, like, oh, like she said, like, were you there when the teacher yelled at me? I'm like, no, I don't think so. And, just like that. And I figure, like, oh, my mother's just, she knows me as her teacher's kid, and, her teacher, my mother, is a pretty friendly person, so, seemed normal to me. But one day, the trimester ends, and this person, like my mom tells me that one day the girl came in and said, "So hey, how's Ethan doing? He's awfully quiet, isn't he?" And she's like, "Yeah," and so I thought, that was kind of weird. And one day in trimester two, I was in my second block class, and I was looking at like something on the wall. I can't remember. And then this girl gets my attention and she says, "Hey Ethan, you should read this." And she hands me like this little paper slip that's like folded up. And my first initial thought was, "Oh no, someone like, someone's got a crush on me or something." And I'm like, "Well, this isn't good." And then so I go to my mother's classroom. She steps out, and my first thing I did was I threw the note away. I just decided to try and forget about it, but I have anxiety and I just can't forget about it. So I pull the note back out of the trash can and I read it, and it says to check my email on my iPad because I didn't have like any social media. I didn't bring my phone to school a lot, so no one knew how to like really get in contact with me. So they told me to check my email on my iPad, which is pretty stupid, right? Um, and this email basically said, "Oh, hi, this is I'm emailing to tell you that my friend really likes you and wants to be in a relationship, and it's not a joke." And this person, we're gonna call this person they them, the person who had a crush on me, because that was their pronouns, which I think is fucking stupid. But you do you, I guess. But so, and they say like, "Oh, this they them likes me," like whatever, and at the time, this person didn't change their like this person apparently changed their name because people do that nowadays, which I think is also fucking stupid. But I so they did that. So I thought it was a troll because I didn't know who the hell they were talking about. And this is a big part. The email said respond if you're interested, all right? So the next day, I didn't say a goddamn word. I sat down in second block and I kept my mouth shut the entire time. I even asked my mom, I'm like, "Hey, can I come to school a little bit later?" And she's like, "No, why? You got problems?" I'm like, "Yeah." But anyways, and so I get to block two and I don't say anything and they don't say anything to me. So I think I'm in the clear here, right? I think, I'm all good. They understand. And apparently not, because a few weeks later, they this person that gave me the note came into my mother's classroom for lunch, right? While I was there with one of her friends and the they them person, right? And I'm thinking, oh, like I said, my mother's a friendly person. People like to come visit her all the time, and so I'm thinking that that's just what this is. And well, so I sit down and I eat, because she got a burger from Lowe's, so I was eating. And then after I left, I just went about my day. And when I went back there to her classroom at the end of the day, because I don't take a bus, I drive home with her. Um, she said, "Oh, hey, so you know those girls that were in like that came to lunch?" And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" And then she like has this smile on her face. I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh, they told me that this they them person has a crush on you." And I'm like, "Jesus Christ, Mom, I don't care." And for the rest of the day, she's like teasing me about it. And then when I got home, my dad said something, and he's like said something about it, and like my mom told him. And at this point, I was already like starting to get pretty pissed off because it was just getting out of hand. So I was like getting mad. I was just getting overall annoyed. And for the next like 3 weeks, this they them person would like come to my mother's classroom during lunch while I was in there and like try to make up some sort of shit excuse to like talk to her or something like that. And then she'd say like hi to me at the end of every single time. And I'm like, oh yeah, hey, and then she'd walk off. And then I'd be like, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna kill myself because I wasn't enjoying it very much. She was not a very attractive lady, all right. Normally I'd be flattered, but this time I was not, all right. But so for the sorry voice crack for the next like 3 weeks or for the rest of the year, really, she did that. And like I told a bunch of people about this by now. Like I told like friends, I've told like teachers because I knew the teachers pretty well there. Um, and so basically, she just keeps doing it. And on Valentine's Day, like we would hear them come down the hallway, and I would be like, "Mom, shut the door quickly." And I remember one time she actually saved me. Like as they were coming down the hallway, she like found them and like said, "Oh hey, you should walk with me." And she saved my ass. But so one day, like on Valentine's Day, my mom did shut the door, and they stopped coming, and like they didn't come after that. I'm like, oh my god, maybe they finally got the hint. And so for the whole entire rest of the year, like they didn't really come over anymore. So I thought, you know what, maybe I got the hint. Maybe all this is finally over. I can forget about this foolish nightmare. And so, about another 3 weeks, and it's almost the end of the year. It's getting pretty damn close. And the girl does it again. She comes to the room one last time, and I hear her. I didn't know it was her because I was talking, like I heard talking outside in the hallway. And when I went out to like go to the bathroom or something like that, she was there with her friends, and I was like, Jesus Christ! And I didn't say anything. I just walked by, went to the bathroom, and I'm like, she's not in there. That's all I said. I'm like, she's not in there. Because I'm obviously going to assume, or at least pretend to assume that they're there for my mother, even though I know damn well what they're here for. Um, so basically, I went to the bathroom, I came back, and they were walking out, and she's like, "Oh, Ethan, this is totally random and out of the question." And I'm like, "Yep, get to the point." She's like, "You look super good in that flannel," because I was wearing a flannel, and I mean, guys, I gotta say, I do look pretty good in a flannel, but like, so she says that, and then like I'm like, "Yeah, thank you very much," and then I walk off, and as I walk off, I like hear them giggling and stuff. I'm like, Jesus Christ. And so that's like the last time I remember that year. And then the year ends, summer comes, I enjoy a nice 2 month long break. And I forget about it. I forget about her, they, them. I forget about anything that happened. Well, I don't forget about it, but it's not on my mind as much as it was. And I figured, they forgot about me too. She's not into me anymore. But I guess not because next year, they continued to come to Mo's classroom every morning. And this time my mom had like a student teacher. He was pretty cool. And they would like he would be there too. And so one day she was like, "Oh, who are you?" He's like, "Oh, I'm the new student teacher." And so for like the first 3 weeks or so, or no, 2 weeks, she came into the classroom, do her same old shit. And eventually, like I said, I'm just assuming she forgot all about me, right? And one day I'm in block 4, right? And I'm like, oh man, I gotta piss super badly. So I rushed my block 5 class, and I noticed there's a note on my desk. And I'm like, oh shit. And so I sit down, and I don't look at the note because I learned my lesson from last year. Like, I practically have PTSD to this day, like when that girl handed me that note. And like, so I look at the note, and I see the initials are the person's initials, and I'm thinking, oh, who has those initials? Oh, that girl, I guess she's pretty hot, I'd be flattered. And I look down, and it's the girl, and I stood up, and I kind of flipped out. I was like, hell no, screw this, to hell with this, no, I'm not doing this again. And like I walk to the door and I think about throwing the note in the trash can, but I didn't. I just put it on like a little table and just sort of tried to forget about it. And the teacher walks in, she smiles and like laughs at me. I'm like, "What's so funny?" And she's like, for the rest of the entire time, she like every single time she saw me in class, she was like laughing. I'm like, "Don't give me that note. I don't want that." And then I go back into my mom's room at the end of class because it was block 5, end of the day. And remember how I said I had to piss really badly? Like at that point when I read the note, I didn't want to take a piss because I was afraid I was going to get sexually assaulted. Um, but that's that. So I go into my mother's room and I tell her we're moving to Canada. And she takes one look at the note, and I will never forget her laugh and her face when she saw who it was from. It was just like, and the student teacher like obviously like realized at that moment like the person who had been coming in every day came in for a very specific reason, not for Miss my, not for the teacher, not for my mother, but for me, obviously. And he told me this one thing, like, make sure you just be polite about it, don't be mean about it, and don't, because he told me a little story about how he did that to someone and they made fun of him for it, and I felt kind of bad. And he told me, just never do that. And I'll never forget that because that's sort of what I did. I just sort of like, I didn't mean to, obviously, but I just sort of like, it's just a funny campfire story at this point. So I tell her, we're moving to Canada, get the hell out of here. And she's obviously laughing it up, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. And for after that, I guess one of her friends like came in, or like one of her friends were in that class and saw me sort of flip out about it, and then told her like, "Oh, he ripped it up and threw it away," which I did not. Um, and so after that, she stopped coming to see me. Finally, I don't know how, I don't know why it took that long to finally get the goddamn hint, but it did. So yeah, and I've told this story millions of other times to millions of other people. Um, and I remember, like, I'm bringing it up now because I was playing with a couple friends that night, and the girl who handed me the note in the first place was one of the people I was playing with, and she was like, "Oh yeah, she would talk about you in like really funny and weird ways." And I'm not gonna say what they like. They told me what she said about me, and I'm not gonna say it because it was super fucking weird. But you could probably like you could just let your imagination rile up about what she said. Just let your imagination think about that all day. And I thought I got the idea. What if I told this and put it on YouTube, which is obviously a shitty thing to do, since like I said, the student teacher told me not to like make it out there. But that's why I'm not saying anybody's real name, right? But yeah, that's just a funny little story that I thought I'd tell you. And moral of the story is, if you have a crush on somebody, walk up to them and tell them and like ask them like, "Hey, you want to go out sometimes?" Don't do it through an email or through a note or through a friend. Walk up to them and tell them. And if someone does message you and tell you that you like them, just say something immediately. Don't like assume. Just say no thanks. All right. So that's the moral of the story. Yeah. Bye.